You do got to have a sense of humor, don't you? Sometimes what I do is I'll go back and look at and listen to one of my videos as if I'm the observer of my own stuff, okay? In other words, I'm being you, as if I'm one of you, listening to my own presentation to see whether or not it's in alignment with myself and the bidirectional mirror or echo chamber of the cosmos, okay? So I thought to myself after listening to it, I thought, well, you know what? They didn't have the benefit, because if I get a couple views here and there, they probably didn't listen and watch all the other videos. So we're back to data, okay? And why is that? Because it's sort of like what I explained in one of my videos. In order for you to be able to, when you get into qualifiers and givens, like, I got to make sure I give them all the data. God dang, all the data that underlies all of this. You know, you can't just put all that data into their head just like that. You know, particularly when they're running in a time clock-driven DNA, right? You know, there is a reason that they have classrooms in the lower levels of creation in order to learn how to go faster. So when you're learning how to go faster, when you're in alignment with a goddess, you begin to realize where she is and where you are. Obviously, she didn't get to be as big as she is with as much energy she has to give everybody, because she's the one who runs on 110 volts, 60 hertz, 220 amps of service in this planet. Where do you think all that juice is coming from? Now, they just missed the boat. They went to the wrong classrooms. And that is the truth. So I thought, as a qualifier here, I thought, well, in my other videos, I talked about qualifiers and givens, okay? It's like I can't include all the data because there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, even though there's only one rule, which is love is the law, okay? Which is what light is in living spirit. So when you start from that and you know that and you are that, everything else is just simple. Have at it. I don't got to worry about you. You don't got to worry about me, right? Because you're not going to do any harm. I'm not going to do any harm. We're all living in real time, no time. That's why the speed at which you're experiencing is so fast. When everybody's experiencing something at that rate of speed, it's like, man, everything's immediate. Wow. You're experiencing what you're experiencing immediately, which means the energy that you are, which is vibrating so fast, shit, it's happening as it's happening, which means you're not aware of the past. You're not even aware of the future. It doesn't exist. Everything's now time. That's home for me. So one of the things I thought of when I thought about all the classrooms that I've ever been to in my life, not every class I've ever been in was a complete waste of time because, you know, we multitask, right? Particularly when you're compiling data on your timeline that is all sequentially and numerically in line with your particular timeline, okay? Remember I talked about anchor points? Anchor points to maintain your timeline. So you're remembering my timeline's intact because you have certain anchor points of experiences that is just like the anchor that I mentioned when you decide you want to rappel down the side of El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. So if you have an image in your head before you've actually done it, that you're already on the floor, then why bother? Well, because you want to take the physical body with you to have it experience it in the physical body, even though you're spirit. You're the life force, the vital force that is the life force. The spiritual light body that is in the physics of this, the holographic projection, the avatar, okay? So in order to get the avatar to experience the bottom of Yosemite Park after you've climbed and rappelled down it, okay? Because believe it or not, I don't have to do it in a physical body in order to describe the experience that I already had. Put that in a book, have you read it, and you experience it through my mind the way I did without having actually done it in a physical body. Welcome to the world of fiction in a library, okay? So anyway, the importance of that is because creative imagination is probably the most important thing that I think about from a creator being point of view, because that's what happens when you're in now time, okay? So I've had the great fortune, particularly when I was going to school in the 1950s, when music and art and creativity and taking wood shop, metal shop, those kinds of things are classes that I enjoyed very much. Actually, because when you're in learning mode, and how do I put this? When you realize that your timeline is only a given amount of time, and when you realize that, hell, you take a grain of sand on the beach, and if that represented a moment of time, or say your timeline here, when this particular avatar, because of everything that they did to Gaia's creation, by the time I jumped into it, I've had an enormous amount of edit changes that took place, okay? So when you realize that you've only got a certain amount of time in which to experience the amount of data that you're normally accustomed to running without even thinking about it, that makes up the holographic universe, which is infinite experience, which is infinite light, which is infinite data that can be numerically quantified, right? It means that you know that you only have a certain amount of time, which means, man, I gotta go fast, really fast. So that's like cranking up the speed, which is cranking up the furnace, which is running as hot a light as you possibly can, so you can experience everything you can experience as fast as you possibly can. But we also recalibrate it, like decelerate down, so you can stop, smell the flower, give love and a kiss to the flower, and say, thank you for being here, baby. Okay? That kind of stuff. Remember? Stop and smell the roses, right? Even though you're really not even aware of the speed, unless you think about it. When that happens, now all of a sudden you just slow down, which you normally would imagineer that's in place. So you realize the calibration of the speeds that you're using and why that's happening within a time clock-driven reality here, and why you're here. So when I put all of the data together as a result of all the experiences that I have, you can measure each one of those vibrational-wise or speed frequency-wise, okay? And of course, all that's part of the record because I punched all that in 2016, which is like punching in your time card or punching in your timesheet, okay? I think I explained time card programming in one of my other videos, which is held to rule-driven functions. It's easy to program somebody, okay? There's a lot of robots. You know, I saw a load of them, which means here's the information, run on it. And they'll run on it. Okay? You see what I'm saying? That's a robot. So I grew up around a lot of robots. So I knew what was happening and why they do what they do, which means they don't think outside the box. Okay? Which is limited perception, which is limited data. Okay? Just tell me what I'm supposed to do and I'll do it. And they do. That's a slave. Otherwise known as a slave. Remember in computer terms what a slave drive is? A hard drive that's running information off of a system program or an operating system. Same shit. Okay, so in other words, they haven't learned to break out of the box, which means expand their bandwidth perception by running on more light, which is infinite data. Okay, so who they learn from? Well, we know who they learn from. They didn't know any different. This is where we get into identity disorders. Okay, so at the end of the day, one of the things I thought about and I shared with Robert David Steele about holographic money. Okay, so imagine you're holding on to a piece of holographic money, which means when you're thinking in data transfer speeds. Okay, so it means if I'm going to make a transaction, when my fingerprint, which is, say, for example, the thumbprint of a tree, by the way, they're very similar to each other, it means that, like voice prints, you know, I think it was Wells Fargo Bank was starting to do voice prints, okay? Just like when I had met Patty Broussard for the first time on a video. Her voice print, her core frequency identity, who she is in the entire network is a known. So her voice print identity was in my database. I was supposed to hook up with her, not at any other moment other than the precise moment in which that event is linked to the event horizon timeline. Not a moment sooner, not a moment later, right then. Okay? So when I had heard her voice print, bang, stay with her, get all her data. Because now I'm going to use her data, just like I use all the data, in which that data represents not just the timeline, but data that gets shared through the morphogenetic field structure. Okay? Speed this process up. Because you realize that you're on a timeline that is sequentially sort of already there, because you've already been on the other end of this, right? So it's not like I need a rule book on how to do this. You already know how to do this. That means that you're intuitively running on your intuition. which means your future self is communicating with your now time self right now, which means this is what you do. So when you implicitly trust your intuition, okay, you just do what you do. So you already know what you're doing is why you're supposed to be doing it, because where you end up, you already know that you're going to end up there. That's called implicit trust. So you implicitly trust who you are, okay, and that means you implicitly trust the goddess and the planet, okay, which I do, because my spirit's bonded with hers, okay. That's why it doesn't matter to me what she does, okay? Okay? She's a teacher in this classroom. That's why I'm here. So I thought to myself, qualifiers and givens is another trap, okay, in a matter of sense, because I thought Patty Broussard at one time said it was funny as heck the way she put it. There's no way, okay, that anybody could hold that much data in their head at once and then just spit it out and say, here it is, without your head exploding. You could not hold that much data in your head. So when somebody say, hey, well, listen, well, he meant one thing, he was saying one thing, but he left some stuff out. It's not that it's not in here. It's just that I didn't say it because there's just so much that's in there that it's like I can't get it all out in one video, in one book. I mean, there aren't enough shelves in every university library on this planet to get it all out. Because you realize how this works. When you're running on infinite light, which is infinite love, which unconditional love, because it's non-transactional, which means that the speed at which you're experiencing who you are is naturally broadcasting high-frequency energy, okay? Which means we're giving it away at such a high rate of speed. That's what it means to be a sun up there, okay? That's free energy. That sun is giving us energy. Okay, so that's the purpose of a classroom, is to learn how to be a self-sustaining energy provider, because the real gods and the goddesses in this galaxy, okay, do exactly that. They're energy service providers, okay? They're in classrooms from which you learn how to become someday what they are. Not an exact copy, but you have learned how to go faster, to attract more of what you are, which is what love is, which is more light. Now you have access because you are bigger, just like a sun is, just like she is, to have a classroom of your own someday. That's the beauty and the magnificence of the cosmos and how it works that way. So what it boils down to is, who are we learning from? Okay. So she was my teacher. So I realized one day, as I explained in the last video, and I'll leave everybody with this, sitting up in a high chair, okay? And we had 5 orange trees in the backyard. So my mother would go out and pick fresh oranges in Northridge, California, where that part of Los Angeles County and the San Fernando Valley still had a lot of orange trees left. There was a time living in Los Angeles County, it was actually very beautiful. It was rural. Before all of a sudden that big wave came in after World War II, later on in the late 50s and early 1960s, you know? So what happens is that I was able to translate, that's a tree, it's providing fruit, that's orange juice, it's good for me, it tastes good, and it's not costing me anything to get it. The girl on the planet is giving us free energy. Wow. I just learned something from her. The planet is teaching you something. Well, I want to hang out with her. What more does she have to teach me? Next thing you realize, you love being with her all the time. Okay? That's why the tribes and the clans hang out with her. Okay? Which is why savage means living in the trees. Okay? So that's why we live in the trees. Because the energy is higher. Okay, the frequencies and her signals are more powerful. Like if you want to really feel the full power of that girl, go find yourself a living magma flow like I did on the Big Island. Of course, that flow is down now. I don't know what it's doing now because it's been about almost a year and a half since I left the Big Island and I stayed on Oahu for a while. and then came back here when they started the lockdown bullshit. And but to be within a half a mile of a large flow of lava, living magma, is one of the most powerful, energetic experiences that I've ever had, because you get to experience the full power of her living spirit, that much energy that she's producing. Okay? That's called a frame of reference between who she is and who you are on her planet, which is her classroom. So I'll leave you with that. Have a great day. We love you all.